Christian does something wrong, he or she has to make amends. At the arrest tonight, I was wrong in hitting you.
New tonight, Harlem-born actor Clarence Williams III has died at the age of 81. Williams was perhaps best known for his role as Link, the brooding undercover cop in the television series The Mod Squad.
The terrible secret Clarence Williams III died with wasn't scandal, but a lifetime of hidden battles. From the groundbreaking cool of The Mod Squad to the haunting terror of Tales from the Hood, Clarence didn't just act, he unsettled.
You might want to lower that a little bit. Hit me in the heart, so you don't make a mess.
And while Hollywood chased fame, he carved his own path in silence, earning respect but stirring unease. Behind the quiet dignity were violent altercations, whispered controversies, FBI-level threats, profound personal loss, and a devastating disease he never revealed.
Williams was perhaps best known for his role as Link, the brooding undercover cop in the television series The Mod Squad. He passed away in his home in Los Angeles on Friday after a battle with colon cancer.
This is the untold story of Clarence Williams III. And it begins with the night his performance was so chilling, the FBI had to step in. In 1995, Clarence Williams III was already known as a man who could command the screen with unsettling intensity.
The drugs. You get the drugs, then I get the money.
But no one expected that one of his roles would provoke a response so extreme it placed his very life in danger. After the release of a film where he portrayed a deeply menacing character, Clarence began receiving death threats. These weren't anonymous crank calls or fan letters scribbled in anger. These were detailed, targeted threats that mentioned his name, his whereabouts, and his family. They were credible enough to trigger a federal investigation. The FBI was dispatched to monitor the situation, posting agents around the set and tightening Clarence's security. Imagine that. An actor, not a politician or public figure, suddenly living under the shadow of real-world danger simply because of the ferocity of his performance. His art had crossed into something else, something frightening.
Do it! 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 Do it!
For Clarence, this wasn't just another Hollywood controversy. It was proof of the raw power of his craft. He had become so believable, so haunting in his role, that certain individuals could no longer separate Clarence Williams, the man, from the characters he portrayed. In a twisted way, it was the ultimate compliment to his talent, but it was also a curse. The weight of those threats stayed with him. Even colleagues on set recalled the tension, describing the atmosphere as unlike anything they'd experienced before. Clarence remained professional, never letting fear derail his work. But those closest to him could see the toll. He was cautious, quieter, and even more guarded than usual. This incident marked the peak of the dangers he faced as an artist, where a fictional performance led to real-world consequences, and federal law enforcement had to intervene to keep him alive. For Clarence, it wasn't just another acting job. It was a reminder that his gift carried risks most actors would never face.
And we attempted to make it as real as possible. There isn't any glamour in it. There isn't any joy in it. There isn't any touchdowns in it. It is horrific behavior.
But this would not be the last time controversy followed him. Years before, Clarence had already found himself in the center of another storm. This time not from his audience, but from a violent clash on set that would threaten his career and his reputation. Now, if the FBI incident in 1995 revealed the danger of Clarence Williams III's art, another controversy a decade earlier revealed the danger of his temper.
Keep your door locked and say the three magic words. Who is it? Julie, the day of the flower child is over.
In August 1983, during the filming of a project, Clarence found himself in the middle of a heated conflict. The tension didn't come from another actor, but from someone behind the camera, a young assistant director named Doug Thompson, just 23 years old. What began as a routine disagreement quickly spiraled into something far more serious. Witnesses described the confrontation as sudden and explosive. Clarence, known for his piercing intensity on screen, carried that same energy off-screen. Words turned sharp, voices rose, and the production atmosphere shifted from professional to chaotic in a matter of moments. Before anyone could intervene, Clarence and Thompson were physically grappling. The situation escalated to a shocking point. Clarence reportedly picked up a weapon during the altercation. For those on set, the sight was unforgettable. An actor whose presence already carried an aura of danger, now standing in the middle of a real-life clash that blurred the line between performance and reality. News of the incident reached the media, and while not all details were clear, one fact remained. Clarence Williams III had been involved in a violent on-set altercation. In Hollywood, perception is everything, and this story painted Clarence as volatile, perhaps even unstable. The whispers began. Was he too difficult to work with? Was he dangerous?
Hot soup, motherfucker! Hot soup!
For a man who built his career on discipline and emotional power, the incident cut deep. Those close to Clarence argued that he wasn't reckless or careless. He was passionate, serious, and unwilling to be disrespected. Yet passion in a high-pressure environment can tip into volatility, and in this case, it did. The fallout wasn't catastrophic, but it left a mark. In an industry where reputations are currency, Clarence's reputation was now complicated. To some, he was still the brilliant, uncompromising actor capable of transforming a scene with raw magnetism. To others, he was someone to approach with caution, a man whose temper could ignite without warning. This altercation stood as one of the most public and violent controversies of his career. It didn't end his trajectory, but it reinforced his image as someone who would not be tamed by Hollywood's expectations. And in time, Clarence would prove that this unwillingness to bend wasn't just about temper, it was about principle.
Now, we all remember our next guest as Link from the Mod Squad, but in Hoodlum, he plays Bub Hewlett, an old-school gangster who joins Dutch Schultz's gang.
After the Mod Squad made Clarence a household name, Hollywood wanted more of him on their terms. Studios saw him as the perfect star to capitalize on the 1970s blaxploitation wave. These films were bold, stylish, and commercially successful, but they also leaned on stereotypes and glorified violence. To producers, Clarence's tough charisma and brooding presence were a perfect fit. One of the most high-profile offers came with 3 the Hard Way, an action-packed feature that promised a bigger paycheck, top billing, and another chance to cement his Hollywood stardom. For many actors struggling to secure roles, this would have been a dream opportunity.
Gonna set me up?
But Clarence shocked everyone. He turned it down. In a 1977 interview, he explained his decision clearly. He would not perpetuate harmful stereotypes or glorify violence for the sake of a paycheck. For him, acting was never about quick fame or financial gain. It was about truth, about reflecting the human condition without feeding the machine of exploitation. This was more than a career choice, it was a statement. Clarence knew the risks. By rejecting a role in a hit film, he was effectively rejecting the system that had the power to decide which actors would rise and which would fade. Now the street is saying, Hollywood does not forgive defiance easily. Whispers began. Some called him unmarketable. Others branded him difficult. Casting directors quietly moved on to actors more willing to play the game. Yet Clarence never wavered. He carried himself with the same dignity off-screen that audiences saw in his most powerful performances. While others climbed ladders built on stereotypes, Clarence built his career, brick by brick, choosing projects that reflected his values. His refusal to compromise cemented his reputation as an actor with integrity, even if it meant working less frequently than his peers. This principled stand cost him opportunities, but it also set him apart. Clarence Williams III would never be a Hollywood puppet. He was an artist, not a product, and that resolve traced back to the hardships of his earliest days in Harlem, where resilience, art, and struggle defined his very identity. Clarence Williams III's unshakable sense of integrity didn't appear out of nowhere. It was born out of hardship, rooted in Harlem's rhythm, and forged through the complicated legacy of his family. He came into the world on August 21, 1939, at the height of Harlem's cultural power.
Interesting story is, I'd gone by the Harlem YMCA to borrow $20 from my sister because she was the switch support operator there.
His bloodline was steeped in music and artistry. His father, Clarence "Clay" Williams Jr., played the saxophone professionally. His grandfather, Clarence Williams, had already carved his name into jazz history as a pioneering composer and pianist whose work shaped the sound of the Harlem Renaissance.
Harlem was magnificent. You know, 7th Avenue was the equivalent of 5th Avenue in New York, but uptown.
His grandmother, Eva Taylor, was no less a force, a celebrated blues singer whose voice carried the stories of struggle and survival. For many, this would have been a golden ticket into a life of privilege. For young Clarence, it was the opposite. When he was just 6 months old, his life fractured. One account suggests that his mother vanished without explanation, leaving Clarence in the care of others. Clarence did not grow up in a stable, traditional home. Some sources say he was raised by his paternal grandmother above a funeral home, a surreal setting where the living and the DD coexisted under one roof. Others note that after his parents separated, he drifted between relatives in Harlem and the Bronx, learning early what it meant to adapt, survive, and harden himself against disappointment. That instability carried its weight. A child of Harlem in the 1940s and 1950s, Clarence was surrounded by beauty and turbulence in equal measure. He saw musicians, hustlers, preachers, and dreamers all sharing the same sidewalks. On one block, jazz floated from club windows. On another, poverty pressed families into despair. That duality, joy and pain, art and struggle, imprinted itself on him, shaping a worldview that was both skeptical and deeply human. Above all, Clarence understood loss from the beginning. The absence of his mother, the separation from his father, and the constant moving from one caretaker to another left scars that never fully faded. But instead of breaking him, those wounds sharpened his awareness. They gave him empathy, but also a defiant edge. He would later channel that rawness into every performance, carrying Harlem's lessons into the roles that made him unforgettable. The funeral home, the jazz clubs, the broken family ties, these weren't just details of his childhood. They were the soil out of which Clarence Williams III grew, preparing him to enter the world not as a polished Hollywood product, but as an artist shaped by grit, pain, and resilience. Now, his journey toward acting began almost by accident. As a teenager wandering through Harlem, he stumbled into a theater space tucked beneath a YMCA. He wasn't looking for art. He had gone to borrow $20 from his sister, who was an operator at YMCA.
Thank you for inviting me, Chris.
Thank you. Now, I hear your first acting experience was actually with Cicely Tyson.
Very, very first. It was in New York City at the Harlem YMCA. No, but the interesting story is, I'd gone by the Harlem YMCA to borrow $20 from my sister because she was the switch support operator there.
But as he stepped into the hall, in his bid to act nicely, he accepted a role that ushered him into the world of acting.
And she says, "Are you an actor?" And I said, "No, ma'am." She says, "Would you like to be one?" I said, "Yes, ma'am. I was just trying to be nice." So there was a small part,
My brother, the part of my brother.
Yeah. And there was a small part that they really needed a kid for, but you know, you can't bring a kid all these rehearsals, you know, and particularly for free. So they had to cast it older, and that's when I met this magical lady.
Yet the path to that discovery wasn't immediate. Before he could chase acting seriously, Clarence enlisted in the U.S. Army. The timing was crucial. It was the late 1950s, and like many young black men of his generation, he faced limited opportunities. The military offered structure, escape, and a chance to prove himself in a world that didn't give second chances. Assigned to C Company, 506th Infantry, of the elite 101st Airborne Division, Clarence became a paratrooper. The training was brutal. Every day demanded endurance, precision, and obedience under pressure. The young man who once drifted through Harlem now had to master discipline. He jumped out of planes at dizzying heights, learned how to fight with ruthless efficiency, and endured the psychological grind of belonging to one of the Army's most demanding units. The experience hardened him, but also sharpened something else: focus. That focus would become the cornerstone of his acting career. Clarence didn't approach roles casually. He attacked them with the same intensity and discipline he had learned in uniform. Just as a paratrooper must commit fully when leaping from a plane, Clarence committed fully to each character he embodied. Clarence Williams III built his career on intensity, honesty, and a refusal to act in the conventional sense. In the 1990s, he brought haunting depth to some of his most memorable film roles. In Sugar Hill, 1993, he played the drug-addicted older brother of Wesley Snipes, giving a performance that was raw, unflinching, and deeply tragic.
Here's your God.
In Hoodlum, 1997, he stepped into the shoes of Harlem gangster Bumpy Johnson.
No, Dutch. That ain't necessary.
It's just gonna go in the garbage.
While in Deep Cover, 1992, and Half-Baked, 1998, he proved his versatility, shifting seamlessly from menace to surprising comedy. Clarence never treated these roles as fiction. They were lived-in, layered portrayals that made his characters unforgettable. Beyond the big screen, Clarence thrived in television guest appearances that carried the same fire he first brought to Broadway in 1964. From The Cosby Show,
he had an argument with about drugs.
Drugs?
It's about drugs and gangs.
To Everybody Hates Chris.
You've been here 3 days, 450.
Jeez, you counted it.
He elevated every scene with authenticity and presence. His turn as the eccentric funeral director Mr. Sims in the cult classic Tales from the Hood, 1995, blended poetry, horror, and humor in equal measure, cementing his place in pop culture. Later, from 2003 to 2007, he took on a recurring role as Philby Cross in Hallmark's Mystery Woman series, proving he could adapt his artistry to any stage, whether gritty crime dramas, satirical horror, or cozy mystery films. Williams's foundation shaped everything, leading him to Hollywood's doorstep. When Clarence Williams III returned from the Army, he wasn't the same restless Harlem kid who had stumbled into a YMCA theater. The discipline of the 101st Airborne had given him steel in his spine, and now he was ready to focus that energy on his true calling: acting. Unlike many aspiring performers chasing fame, Clarence sought craft. He threw himself into the New York theater scene, starting with small, often overlooked productions where the pay was meager but the lessons invaluable. His first stage role came in The Long Dream, 1960, an adaptation of Richard Wright's novel. It was far from a star-making debut, but it gave Clarence the confidence that he belonged in this world. He continued to sharpen his skills in plays like Walk in Darkness, 1963, and Double Talk, 1964, and even Prince's troubled father in Purple Rain. A quiet man whose music was the only language.
Don't have to. There's a big difference between you and me.
The real breakthrough came in 1964 with the three-character play Slow Dance on the Killing Ground. Clarence portrayed an angry, restless young man filled with volcanic energy who seemed ready to explode at any moment. It was a role tailor-made for him, blending his Harlem grit, his military discipline, and his instinct for truth. The performance electrified audiences. Critics described him as magnetic, uncompromising, and dangerously alive on stage. For Clarence, this was no act. It was a lived experience distilled into performance. His authenticity was undeniable, and Broadway rewarded him with a Tony Award nomination and a Theatre World Award. That kind of recognition didn't just open doors, it announced him as a new force in American theater. Hollywood began to take notice of the man who could command a stage with silence, who could communicate rage and pain with a single glance. But fame never interested Clarence. Unlike many actors of his era, he wasn't chasing stardom, he was chasing truth. He didn't audition to become a celebrity. He auditioned to disappear into characters. This artistic integrity made him both admired and feared in the industry. Directors knew they could rely on him for depth, but studios worried he wouldn't play by the usual Hollywood rules. Still, his undeniable presence eventually carried him from the gritty realism of Broadway into the bright lights of television and film. In 1967, just before his Hollywood breakthrough, Clarence also married actress Gloria Foster, an artistic union that would shape both their careers in the years to come. And in 1968, just 4 years after his breakout stage success, Clarence would take on the role that would make him an icon of cool and forever change the image of black actors on television. That role was Lincoln "Link" Hayes on the Mod Squad. By the late 1960s, Clarence Williams III had proven himself on Broadway, but Hollywood struggled to place a black actor with his intensity and authenticity. That changed in 1968 when ABC cast him as Lincoln "Link" Hayes in the groundbreaking crime drama The Mod Squad. The show's premise, 3 outsiders turned undercover cops, captured the era's spirit of rebellion and unrest. With his afro, shades, and effortless swagger, Clarence didn't just play cool, he defined it. His catchphrases like "dig it" and "solid" became part of the culture, while his presence offered black audiences dignity and strength rarely seen on TV, and gave white viewers a window into a changing world. Running 5 seasons, the series made him a household name, but Clarence resisted being reduced to a symbol. He clashed with producers over authenticity and refused to accept typecasting when the show ended in 1973. Instead, he pursued darker, riskier roles, committed always to truth over easy fame. When the Mod Squad ended in 1973, Clarence Williams III stepped into uncharted territory. Hollywood expected him to ride the wave of fame, but Clarence had no interest in coasting. He took riskier roles, disappeared into darker characters, and built a reputation as an actor who would never compromise for easy stardom. In his later years, Clarence faced a private battle that few outside his circle knew about. He was diagnosed with colon cancer, a disease he chose not to publicize. Even in illness, his instinct for privacy held firm. He didn't want pity or attention. Instead, he carried the weight of his diagnosis with the same discipline that defined his military years and his acting craft. On June 4, 2021, Clarence Williams III died in Los Angeles at the age of 81.
New tonight, Harlem-born actor Clarence Williams III has died at the age of 81. Williams was perhaps best known for his role as Link, the brooding undercover cop in the television series The Mod Squad.
The announcement stunned the public, not only because of the loss, but because no one had known he was sick. In that silence, he had once again set his own terms, leaving this world as he had lived in it, private, dignified, and uncompromising.
Williams was perhaps best known for his role as Link, the brooding undercover cop in the television series The Mod Squad. He passed away in his home in Los Angeles on Friday after a battle with colon cancer.
Tributes poured in from across the industry. Directors remembered his intensity. Fellow actors praised his integrity. Fans mourned the man who had given them Link Hayes, Mr. Sims, and countless other unforgettable characters. What resonated most was that Clarence had never needed to be a celebrity. He had been something greater, a true artist. His death closed a remarkable life, but his legacy endures. Every time a young black actor refuses to play a stereotype, every time an audience feels unsettled by the power of truth on screen, Clarence Williams III's spirit lives on. He didn't chase immortality, but through his work, he found it anyway.